When there's a bill that ends up on my desk as president, you, the public, will have 5 days to look online and find out what's in it before I sign it. Find out what's in it before I sign it.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it, find out what is in it, find out what is in it.
7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states.
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people, political officials across our country from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
In the 21st century, we are defined not by our borders. In the 21st century, we are defined not by our borders. In the 21st century, we are defined not by our borders. So I say to you and to the Mexican people, let us stand together. Let us face the future together. Let us work together. Trabajemos juntos.
Apart from that, I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education.
While the educational system in America continues its stupefying downward slide since the U.S. government decided to take over and subsidize the public school system.
What your government pays for, it gets.
When we understand that,
then we look at government-financed institutions of education and see the kind of students and the kind of education that's being turned out by these government-financed schools. Logic will tell you that if what is being turned out in those schools was not in accord with what the state and the federal government wanted, then it would change it.
Take, for example, the proposal to eliminate the largest single federal financial aid program, a public-private partnership used to finance and service millions of students' college loans each year. Most Americans would never have predicted such a proposal was on the table, much less that it would be included in a bill aimed at reshaping our health care system. This bill would force every college student and every college in America into a one-size-fits-all program and transform the U.S. Department of Education into one of our nation's largest banks. It takes a temporary problem, the need for increased federal financing of student loans in the face of a global financial crisis, and makes it permanent federal policy. This will put taxpayers on the hook for at least $100 billion a year in direct government lending, and likely much more as college costs continue to rise. That means, conservatively speaking, the U.S. government will take on an additional $1 trillion in long-term debt over the next decade. Additional $1 trillion in long-term debt over the next decade. Additional $1 trillion in long-term debt over the next decade. Additional $1 trillion in long-term debt over the next decade.
9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course.
Eyewitness reports suggest around a dozen US warships and aircraft carriers, as well as one Israeli warship, have passed through the Suez Canal, supposedly heading towards the Persian Gulf.
Well, reports are circulating that the US is amassing a greater military presence in the Middle East. The alleged build-up is also rumoured to involve the Israeli use of Saudi Arabian airspace. It's thought by some to be in preparation for an attack on Iran.
It's an interesting thing, when Barack Obama came into office, he had been elected kind of as an anti-war-ish candidate. And people thought that he was going to wind the various wars down. But in fact, he came into office, he almost immediately doubled down on Afghanistan, on the Afghan war.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
Base building. We now have about 400 bases, large to small, in that country. And that was just Afghanistan. We just learned from the Washington Post the other day, for instance, that while at the end of the Bush period, there were 60 countries with U.S. Special Operations Forces in them. A year and a half later, there's 75 countries. Even though it's not called the global war on terror anymore, the global war on terror, by no name whatsoever, has actually expanded. The first budget, real Obama budget for the Pentagon, that was the fiscal year 2010 budget, went up by Bush increments.
Well, Moscow's warned Washington against striking Iran. Russia's chief of staff revealed on Wednesday the U.S. could attack Iran after wrapping up its campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Russia is not afraid of a possible U.S. attack on Iran. We're just trying to predict the consequences of such a move. This is an important issue for us, as Iran is located near our borders, and it worries us. Another issue is that Iranian society is highly politicized and spiritually strongly united.
The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, the Military Tribunals Act, and other legislations are all completely and entirely designed to destroy your civil liberties and limit your ability to fight back against what is coming. Currently in the United States, unannounced to most brainwashed Americans, your home can be searched without a warrant, without you being home. You can in turn be arrested with no charges revealed to you, detained indefinitely with no access to a lawyer, and legally tortured, all under the suspicion that you might be a terrorist.
The one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem.
There's a double standard in America today. Black folks, especially racist blacks, have the freedom of expression when it comes to the issue of race and morality. But white folks are made to be quiet.
I mean, I have a full watcher certificate, so I can go inside. I think it might be a little bit intimidating that you have a stick in your hand. That's why, you know? Yeah. No, I'm an attorney. I mean, that's a weapon, so that's why I'm a little worried.
The Department of Justice went after those new Black Panthers, won the case, and was ready to talk sentencing, when suddenly, under the new leadership of Eric Holder, someone at the DOJ made the call to drop the case.
I hate white people. All of them. Every last iota of a cracker, I hate it. We didn't come out here to play today. There's too much serious business going on in the black community to be out here sliding through South Street with white, dirty, cracker whore on our arm, and we call ourselves black men with African garb on. What the hell is wrong with you, black man? You had a doomsday with a white girl on your damn arm. You want freedom? You're gonna have to kill some crackers. You're gonna have to kill some of their babies.
The message that we bring is we want to bring a little bit more of a revolutionary context to this. Why is it that these people, these frail, racist white people, want to keep us out of this country? It's not because simply the color of our skin. It's not simply because they just want to exploit us. Let me tell you why. Because on this planet right now, 6 billion people, at the forefront of the revolutionary movement is the raza. When you go to Venezuela, they know that we no longer will fall to these lies called borders. We know that a Salvadoran and a Guatemalan and a Nicaraguense and a Mexicano, there's no damn difference. We are all one people. So with that in mind, we see ourselves, all of us here, as the northern front of a Latin American revolutionary movement.
Mexican government could actually be helping illegal immigrants sneak into the U.S. KDBC Foreign News reporter Marian Martinez is live in the newsroom. Marian, how is the Mexican government helping?
Well, Christina, a group sponsored by the Mexican government helps immigrants lost in the desert find their way to routes that will lead them to the U.S.
Instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, you need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
We have an aging white America. They are not making babies. They are dying. It's a matter of time.
It's not enough to elect Latino leadership. If they're supporting legislation that denies the undocumented, they don't belong in office, friends.
The debate about the issues and what Barack Obama has done with his campaign is they've tried to paint it as a race war for the most part, saying that anytime you criticize me, Barack Obama, it's an attack against me because of race.
Wonderful man there, Reverend Bright.
Right, and who was my pastor, and he is a wonderful man.
Rock knows what it means to be a black man living in a country and a culture that is controlled by rich white people. Now, God bless America. God damn America.
And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government, which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.